Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Radizak, and thank you for attending our first Tech Talk today. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit of the change in the formatting of how these presentations are going to go moving forward. So, the main change is at the end of the presentation, we're going to have an open session for discussion about the topic of the presentation, as well as leaving it open for people to discuss any other issues or questions that they have or things that they might want to see in future Tech Talks. The other big change is we're going to be now doing these sessions monthly for each of the individual topics or individual environments or softwares. So you'll be seeing a video once a month for NX CAD, NX CAM, Solid Edge, Team Center, and Mendix. So you'll have access to all that content if those any of those softwares apply to you. And we're hoping to get some feedback from you guys on what topics you want to see so that we can flesh out that portfolio to kind of drive attendance. So today we're going to be going through some of the changes and enhancements made in the 2312 release of NX, specifically in the design environment, the modeling environment. So here's the agenda for today's Tech Talk. We're going to start it off by going through some of the new functions added into the Sketch environment, specifically Sketch Slot and Sketch Silhouette Curve. We'll then talk about how threads have been introduced to the part families toolbox, just like some other tools that have been added in previous versions. Threads have just been added to that system. And we'll talk about some enhancements in general to the Boolean system that kind of give you access to more multi-body functionality. We'll then go through some curve commands that have been updated. We'll talk about some surfacing workflows that might have changed a little bit in some avenues for those of you who do a lot of surfacing. And then we'll also talk about a new tool called Copy Non-Associative that allows users to make non-associative copies of their geometry. Now, starting off, we have the sketch slot. So inside the sketch environment, we have the sketch slot command. This gives you a sketch-based replacement for the legacy slot command that you guys might be familiar with. So this will allow you guys to quickly drop in a slot while still having the sketch to look back on for design changes. So you'll be able to quickly bring those in, drop a slot in with some set dimensions, and then even convert that to reference in those instances where you need to. So here's a quick demonstration of the slot command. So again, just so you know, we're going into the sketch environment. So this is no longer a modeling tool or a modeling feature. It is a sketch feature that you can then go back in and make an extrusion after. It's directly on your bar underneath the more dropdown, and you can see the values associated with the slot, the length, angle, and width. Now you can quickly come in, draw a line or draw 2 points, and then quickly define that width, and you can drop your slot in very easily. Now you can also come in and use the new Sketcher's intelligent dimensioning tools to quickly dimension that sketch and place those dimensions as needed, or you can come in and define those dimensions preemptively within the slot command itself. So here we're going to go through and go back into the slot command and then just lock those different size values. And you can see what the output is, and you get a good representation of what the sizing of that slot is. And then you can just drop it in, and NX will automatically dimension that according to your X and Y axis for you. So you can get a predefined constrained sketch very quickly from the slot command. Now, the silhouette curve is another sketch tool that was added. For those of you who might be familiar with the recent editions of NX, it will look very similar to the shadow curve command, except in this scenario, we're going to be creating curves within the sketch environment rather than the modeling environment. So we'll also have the option to make these curves associative. So if we go back and make a design change, we can have the silhouette curve update accordingly, and you can drive some other parts of your design using that silhouette curve. Just a quick example of this. So in this scenario, we want to project the outline of this surrounding body to a sketch plane. And the process is as simple as picking our sketch plane, as you normally would, and going into the silhouette command and grabbing the body and the faces that you want to include in that outline. So you can see I have it set to body faces single body, so it'll go ahead and grab all those faces at once. And then it'll bring that outline directly into that sketch plane, similar to how Project Sketch works, but in this case, we're actually grabbing the body itself. So now, this is just going to help show and be used as a representation to kind of give you a good outline for what's changing in the model when we make a design change. So moving up forward a little bit here. Now you can see once we hit finish, we go back out to the modeling space. We're going to make a quick design change to show that associativity moving forward. So coming into our move face command, just making a quick change to the expression value here. You can quickly see the value and the outline change accordingly to how the body moved with that design change. So you can see that associativity carrying forward. Now moving into threads in part families. So thread expressions are now going to be exposed and be able to be used within those part family tables. So you will have the ability to pull that information in and use those thread feature parameters like thread standard, thread size, and your radially engaged directly inside of your part family tables. So it just gives the user a little bit more control when defining these part families. And we've seen this in the past couple of versions. The Siemens is trying to incorporate more features within the part family ecosystem. So you have more tools at your disposal when using it. The only thing of note is you need to make sure that you renew those old thread features to get this updated functionality. So if you're going back into an old part and you want to add your thread expression or thread parameters into your part family, you have to make sure to go into open that model and use renew feature on those threads or those holes to get that information and bring that forward into your part families. MultiBody Boolean. So this is kind of a big change. This was something that was asked for quite a bit, and it's a very big quality of life improvement in this release. So you'll now be able to select multiple bodies within your Boolean selection of the whole command, as well as multiple bodies within your standalone Boolean commands. So this will give you the user a bit more control over these kinds of operations, allowing you to condense Boolean operations within single features rather than having to create a feature for each body. And this edition, Siemens also improved the system feedback, so it kind of clarifies issues with when you're doing a subtract out of multiple bodies. It'll signify what bodies aren't actually intersecting, as shown in the image to the right. So you can see that um, intersection is not going to work for that last tool body because the body's fully self-intersecting or isn't intersecting with the target. So you can see that distinction there. Now again, just a quick example of this. So we have a bunch of link bodies in here. We're going to be going in and subtracting these out from our target body. Now this works both within the Boolean operations themselves as well as within your Boolean tools. So you can see that when we come into select those bodies that we want to subtract out of, you can see that that body doesn't intersect. So it is going to just go ahead and subtract that body from itself. And you can even see in the part navigator on the left-hand side that that subtraction has the one or more tools alert that's telling you that this subtraction had a tool body that wasn't intersecting with the target body. So you can even see that within that part navigator as well. Now, enhancements for curve commands. So there's a number of enhancements made here. So Siemens came out with a number of quality of life improvements, is what I like to call these, for a lot of tools, as well as some new options that give the user a little bit more finite control over their curves. The text command specifically got some improvements to its ease of use, allowing you to lock some aspect ratios down um, and scale your texts and text blocks more easily. The character spacings were also refined, so you now have a little bit more accurate control over spacing between individual characters or sections of characters. Siemens also added an advanced curve fit option within your composite curve and 3D maximum and 3D offset curve commands that allow you to display and evaluate the maximum deviation for each of the individual points along the curve. Along with this, you also now have the ability to use edit object to display to change the appearance and color of your curve endpoints. So you can clearly see where the endpoints of each line are, and you can even toggle on all your curve endpoints uh, from a single toggle within the analysis tab now. That's a very nice tool. And finally, another option for how the curve on surface command is calculated has been added. So now you have a projection for a normal to surface output and a geodesic for minimum arc length along a surface. And you'll get to see that here in a second. So in this example, we're going to go through the text command first. So as you can see, um, first off, they're going to take a look at the aspect ratio. So you can see the sizing of the text currently. You can go in and change it just like you would previously, and you can adjust those sizes um, and make those kinds of changes. But if we wanted to set W scale, we can lock that aspect ratio down. You can see the number then grays out. And when we change the size for height, the width will change with it. So we can make sure that scale stays the same. We don't have to finagle with that too much. Now there's also a font gap feature that has been refined. So now we have a little bit more finite control over the gaps between each of the individual letters on that font. But we also have the ability to separate it. So if we want to have specific letters within it, so maybe for instance NX, we want to have a little bit more spacing for those two particular letters in the logo, we can do so. So it just gives you that little bit added level of control. Coming in, quickly making some changes to fonts and stuff like that, just like you would before, but now you can kind of have that finite control of the font gap across multiple fonts. Now, moving into show the endpoint changes. So as you can see, there's a toggle right there in the analysis tab to show all endpoints. So we can toggle that on to show all of those, to have a clear distinction of where those curves end. And then we can come into edit object display quickly using a hotkey here. And we can go in and quickly grab all of those lines and objects and change the individual points within those curves to whatever value we want. So we can change the endpoint color to red. And when we go ahead and fill that out, and there's a number of different options for how we want the endpoints to look, and you can see what that output looks like, right? So we can have a clear distinction of what's connected and what's not, or whatever it is that you kind of want to signify there, and have those curves be very visible for you to find. And finally, just to show the composite curve changes. So coming into our composite curve command, we can quickly see the advanced curve fit, and you can see the deviation along that curve, the maximum deviation. So again, it's something that isn't always necessary, but it does provide a little bit more information for you when you're trying to create these complex curves, to give you a little bit more control over those complex curves. And finally, curve on line type geodesic. So this has got its own little slide. I'm just going to show what the difference is here. So this is just another option within the curve on surface line command. So we can now have a line that has a set distance calculation option for normal projection, which is what you'd be familiar with prior to this change. That was just the default, and what is now geodesic, which is a minimum arc length between points. So it gives you the minimum distance between them along an arc. So there's a couple instances of use for this. But typically normal will be good for most people, but geodesic would be a valuable tool for people who are doing a lot of surfacing or rounded edges who need that minimum arc length value instead. And just to show a quick example of what this looks like, just to show, you can see we come in and quickly drop in a curve on surface. And you can see, just like you normally would, you drop those 2 points down, and you might get an error saying it can't fully create that curve, but geodesic can, right? Because it's going across those multiple surfaces. So there's going to be instances where things like geodesic can provide those curves, whereas normal to surface won't. But it's not necessarily one is always better than the other, right? So it just depends on the use case. So this is just showing the differences between the two and how you can use them, like project a curve, can't cross multiple faces like that, whereas geodesic would be able to. So it just showing you that what that difference looks like, and you can clearly see where it rounds up around that edge. And if you change it to geodesic, it'll go ahead and correct that, giving you that minimum arc length. Oh, whoops. Where was it? So here's our projection. And you can see as it swaps to geodesic, it'll give you that fine arc length across instead of that projected line. So that's the key distinction there between the two. Now, servicing workflows. So there's a few different changes that were made here. There is a new adjacent edge option for your flow directions. So for specifically for Bridge surface is very useful for grabbing those edges across the two different surfaces that it's bridging together. And there's a good example of this on the next slide. But this just kind of gives you a quick grab to grab those G values for the two opposite surfaces and align them so that you don't have to finagle with it as much. And it's just a quality of life change, really, just improving that process. And then services created by styled sweep will now honor input guide curve parameterizations. I know this is something that a lot of people struggled with and have issues with in the past with styled sweep, not following those guide curves properly. And this has been improved in this revision. So you can get a good look at the example of the differences between the two of those and what those outputs look like. And then also an infer face constraint inside its to-do service has been added. So it just gives you just a quicker workflow when using Studio Surface to grab faces. So first off, just showing that adjacent edge option. So starting off, we're just looking at the different options for flow direction and those continuity values and how they change. So when we come into this bridge surface command, you can see those values that the predefined one gave, and we can just swap between them, right? So we have perpendicular now, and you can see those values associated with it. But now if we wanted to come in and use the new adjacent edge, it's going to pull those values from the existing edges and kind of merge them together so that it fits better with the flow of the surfaces. So it just gives you a more incisive, decisive tool to use for those kinds of processes. Now moving into styled sweep, this is an example of a styled sweep that was made in 2306. Now if we come back in and renew this feature to a 2312, this is just a fundamental change to the way it's coded. So once we go ahead and renew that, 2312, it'll reprocess how the renew feature is made, and you can see the new output, right? So that's just a fundamental change to how it's coded and how it processes those surfaces. Now, this is just a quick show of what the change is within Studio Surface, the infer face option. So this is really just going to show how it automatically will pull that face in when you go in and set continuity options. So you don't have to go in and manually select it, right? So the second I set this to G1 tangent, you can see it automatically selected that face for me. I didn't have to go in and select it; it just inferred it. So you can kind of get an idea of what that this just kind of improves your workflow. Less clicks, right? That's a big value point for a lot of people is the number of clicks that it takes to get a process done. Now on to our last topic. So this is kind of the copy non-associative slide, but there's a number of different things in here about some quality of life changes. But the main topic is that copy non-associative command that's been added that just gives you the ability to copy some geometric bodies or features without having it linked back to any parents or feature data. So you can see in the right-hand side, there's a nice little screenshot just showing the non-timestamp geometry of doing a copy from a spline, and also the body that's left over from doing a copy from that trimmed sheet. So it just gives you that functionality now. A couple other quality of life changes that were added were some layer settings selection options, giving you a little bit more control over entities selected within the layer settings. Some automatic propagation inside the adjacent analysis object when you're creating those surface features. Some dynamic update additions. So the law extension variable offset surface commands will actually update dynamically with changes. So if you make a change to a spline curve that is being used for a law extension or a variable offset, you can visually see that change while it's happening and while you're making that change. So a little bit more visibility there on those commands. And then finally, the flattening and forming command now has a fixed arc length constraint and some new accuracy settings to just give you a bit more control. All right, and that's it. So thank you for attending today's Tech Talk. And again, my name is Matt Radizak. And if you'd like to check out any of our other content regarding NX, Team Center, Solid Edge, or Mendix, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. And thank you for attending.